Hello friends, good morning. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the group editor at Banking Frontiers, and I'm really happy to initiate our first NBFC conference titled NBFCs Tomorrow. There is no doubt that NBFCs are playing such a huge and growing role in the economy of the country, particularly during these troubling times of pandemic and lockdown. The thing that NBFCs are really focused on is lending, as opposed to many other financial institutions that do a variety of other services. Now, lending is something that is really very critical during this pandemic and lockdown because the whole crisis has disrupted the flow of money and and there are so many people who are then running short of money, whether it is to run their family, whether it is to run their business, whether it is to fulfill the contracts, the business opportunities that they have in hand, but need the cash flow to finish it, to complete it. So lending is definitely growing by leaps and bounds, and I think it will continue to grow as India's economy races ahead. What is really the interesting part is that the transformation that is taking place, there is of course a digital transformation, but on a bigger scale, I think there is going to be a risk transformation, there's going to be a business transformation, and there is going to be a customer engagement transformation. But we have experts here to tell us more about the kind of transformations they're going to see, that they're going to drive ahead. And I welcome all of you to this panel discussion. I'm handing over to Sachin Seth, who is a moderator for this session. Sachin, over to you, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you. Wonderful to have you set the context. And it's my pleasure to be part of this panel with the eminent panelists and moderate the panel to get the best out of what are their experiences, what they are seeing in the market for our audience for this conclave. Just a quick introduction. So I am Sachin, based in Mumbai. I lead the digital and fintech for Ernst & Young, and I've been in the industry of financial services for more than 2 decades. Have been working with the kind of bigger financial institutions in the past, and last about 5 to 7 years experience has been a lot more with digital companies which are born in this era, and they are the ones who are transforming the whole digital landscape of lending as well, right? So with this quick introduction, probably I'll also would like to add what Manoj said. In addition to that, I think as you see that the amount of transformation happening in financial services obviously is happening in different pockets or different buckets, but I think there is no bigger play wherein the maximum amount of transformation has happened in last 5 to 7 years, and it is not only led by a simple mathematics of lending and collecting the interest. It is also embedded very much along with payments, along with consumption, along with purchase of assets, etc. And on a lighter note, I would like to just add that we have not heard as many acronyms in last probably 20 years what we have heard in last 2 years, which could be buy now, pay later, or buy now, pay never, or whatever it is you can call it, right? I mean, there is practically for everything there is an acronym in the lending space, and really amazing space coming up with a lot of youngsters jumping into it with tech background, and a lot of seasoned bankers and the financial institutions leaders who are also trying to reinvent the whole game by using various mechanisms, right? So with this, I would like to invite our first panelist, Aishwarya from Kinara Capital. And Aishwarya, is part of the Kinara Capital. She's a CFO. And so Kinara Capital, being a more of a digital, oriented company, is spread across the country serving the customers. Probably, Aishwarya, just first quick introduction from you about yourself. And then maybe first question to you would be that, how do you see the landscape changing in last couple of years? And how does Kinara Capital kind of company finds itself in that, the value chain of lending? Yeah. So I should hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sachin. Hello, good morning to all. I'm Aishwarya Ravi, CFO of Kinara Capital. We lend to the small and medium scale businesses and without land or property collateral, which is the unique selling proposition for us, because our vision is to bring into the financial inclusion channel. So how it works is we have a front end, which is completely last mile distribution with actual feet on street officers at the customer's doorstep. And at the back end, we have a tech-led architecture which helps us to collect data, underwrite them, and serve them faster. We've been in business for the last 10 years, and in the last 1 year alone, there has been a sea change in how we do business. So to go to your question, Sachin, on how the lending landscape has changed, lending is not new. We've had lending for God knows how long, and it's always been give and take, right? So you give money and then you try to collect it back, and it's evolved from, you know, the pawnbrokers of the world to then the money lenders, and probably then the bankers, and then the NBFCs. But the way the architecture has now evolved, especially in the last 4 years, has been phenomenal, with the digital adoption going up, mobility increasing, and the infrastructure around the capabilities to underwrite increasing. I think this has gone a warping change in terms of how we do business. And Manoj, when he did the introduction, actually hit it on spot. I think we have to look at it in a three-pronged way. One, on the customer level, then on the risk level, and then on the business level in itself. Now, how we target the customer has changed, because right now in India, only 10% of the population is able to get credit access. Only 10%, that's a very small number. So how do we access these customers who are in the tier 2, tier 3 cities? How do we reach them? How do we underwrite them? That's a big question. And I think digital lending has sort of helped us go that way. That's number one. Secondly, once we reach the customer, how do we underwrite them? How do we, you know, understand the risk of these customers? What data do we have? And your acronyms also come into play here: AI, ML, and all of the other data mining we do on all of these customers. I think in the last couple of years, having the ability to tap into these customers' databases has significantly improved their chances of being underwritten, and then hence, you know, bringing them back into the financial inclusion space. So how do we underwrite risk has definitely changed in the lending landscape. And thirdly, of course, will the businesses be able to give them operationally sustain the activities they are doing and hence reach these customers? I think that's also a very core part, right? At the end of the day, if you're able to technologically lever up your businesses in such a way that your operation cost, etc., is minimized, and hence you are able to bring more and more into the folds of financial inclusion, that's like perfect. So I think digital lending specifically has evolved quite a lot, and it's a changing game every day. Whatever we talk about, the next day changes the previous day over. So I think it's a very interesting space to be in. From Kinara Capital, we've been able to do a lot of stuff in terms of how we think about these business, how we underwrite them, and how we've been able to service over 50,000 business borrowers and actively help them in expanding their businesses. At the end of the day, these are MSMEs, and they contribute to about 40% of our GDP. And there are almost 60 million enterprises out there, and a long way as an ecosystem for us to go to reach and quadruple all of them.
Thank you, Aishwarya. No, I think that's wonderful insight. Excellent. So Jaya, request you to have a quick introduction, a snapshot about yourself. Maybe you could do that as well.
Okay, I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Indostar Capital Finance. So I have been in the banking space for the last 27 years, and my expertise has always been into digital and banking operations and technology. And it's been an evolving space, and every time you create something different, it's a different excitement. So I don't think it's there's too much happening in this space. So I have been enjoying the space. That's about it.
Excellent. So Jaya, coming on, taking that point further, I mean, we do talk about underserved market, low penetration, etc. But everybody knows that there is no dearth of lenders in the big cities, right? There are plenty of options available, right? What about smaller towns? What is the action? What you are seeing, and especially from tier 2 to tier 5, and also, I mean, while traditionally lenders have had a feet on the street, physical models, etc., but pandemic has really disrupted those models. Today, you can't really have branch models. I mean, you can assist with branch, but you can't have a branch as a the primary model, right? So how do you see this tier 2 to tier 5 lending landscape, And in the current era of digital transformation or disruption of NBFCs, what's the future looks like?
Sachin, it's a very interesting question, and I think so. If you look, I just kind of do a comparison between the banking space and the non-banking, the NBFC space. How much ever we call it ourselves digital, how much ever we call ourselves, we want to be the in the space of only use technology. You will still want to see a physical presence of a branch. You still want to go into the branch. You still want to see when you have a problem. Even though you are a digital person, you will still want to go into the branch and talk to someone to solve your problem. So I don't think the space of physical will ever go on from anybody's mind. Okay, now coming to the space of, and that too, when you're talking about a city scenario where you would still want to see a physical presence. When you go back into the tier 3 and the tier 4 cities at this point of time, let me also bring some of those episodes in the organization recently when we were thinking about our expansion. So as Indostar, we are more into lending into the space of commercial vehicles and used commercial vehicles. So we specialize ourselves in used commercial vehicles. And the other space that we are into is into the HFC, into the affordable housing. Now, when you go into these cities and you talk to the people, they're all very happy to to kind of come to you, approach you. But there's another space that is being created. For example, in the space of affordable housing, the question asked is, can you help us to the last mile? When I'm saying last mile, it is, can you help me to kind of get a contractor? Can you get me to the last deliverable so that, I don't have to step out of my house. I don't have to keep searching for people. Can you digitally help me source this whole piece so that I can actually sit, have an app with me, and then, source the entire piece, the raw materials, the contractors, the painting, everything can be done through and it even tells you very digitally what is going to be the space of your house, how much you will require, what is the cost going to be, how much you will get in tranche 1, tranche 2. To that level, there has been a development in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. I mean, tier 3 and tier 4. Now, if you go a step further, you have still lenders you have still borrowers who refuse to pay through Paytm or through a digital app, but will want to go to a physical place and deposit cash. So these are two segments of which do exist in the space of tier 3 and tier 4. So you as an organization will need to have both of it. You need to have a physical as well as a digital. You enable people who want digital to be digitally, with all the requirements of an app, a self-developed app for construction, for painting, for whatever you want to do in the affordable space. At the same time, you will have to also have a physical presence where people will actually walk into the branch and want to pay cash or want to talk to someone to resolve the problem or to lend. So digital, in terms of transformation, organizations are doing everything possible to make it digital, But the other side where the customer is still not reached that stage. So you will have one segment of customers who are okay for especially the affordable housing, where people in the small cities want a small house, they're educated, they're qualified, they will let you have all this information. But when it comes to the commercial vehicle space, the customers have still not gone that extra mile to become digital. They still are, they're the truck drivers, they're those fleets. They wouldn't want to kind of, use your app. And so a mobile app for a commercial vehicle is still not successful, but the assisted model has become quite successful.
Sure.
Home loan, yes, the customer piece has also transitioned into a digital space. So that's what my assessment based on talking to customers, talking to many lenders across has revealed in the last few.
Sure. Thank you, Jayanu. I think that's a wonderful insights for the audience. So Madhu, let me come to you. You have been running one of the most successful digitally born or digitally native lending company, and that too with profits, which are not to be seen much in these models at this moment.
Hey, thanks, Sachin, and good morning, everyone else in the panel. So myself, Madhusudan, I'm the founder and CEO of CreditBee. We are very shamelessly digital company. So I heard from other panelists about phygital in different models and using technologies. And also Sachin mentioned about the valuations and whatnot. So let's say we are shamelessly all of it. Right. So we are shamelessly digital. We are shamelessly going towards a higher valuation, and we shamelessly use all the AI ML technologies in whatever we are doing it. But yeah, the fun aside, I think the space what we are in is a retail B2C unsecured lending. Right. So I think that's where the digital nature of what we do can be completely kind of digitized, and we can run it. And that's what we have been successful in doing it. It's not just the lending. We are into getting all the other financial product or financial services, be it be the insurance products, or be it be the credit score reporting or the CASA based solutions, to the last mile is what we are doing today. So that aside, I think we had a very interesting topic of the cybercrime and fraud. See, I think this happens on both the sides. Not just to blame the customers. I think there are companies which are fraudulent, and then there is a fraud. So let me talk a little bit about both the sides. So especially, and then let me focus on lending here. So on the from the customer side, I think on the retail lending. So what are the three categories of frauds or crimes that happen? Is one is impersonation, right? Simple impersonation, that I have a ID card and a KYC of my family members or my friends, or I picked it up from somewhere from the internet, and now I want to kind of impersonate. Now, the entire nature of being digital, I think this is the most simplistic fraud what anyone would try to do it, because there's nobody connecting or meeting the customer here. The only interface what we use is a mobile phone or sometimes a web browser. So with that, it's probably kind of, the first thing that happens is impersonation frauds. The second fraud, what happens is something at a group level, as in like there is a group attack. This is a little bit of an organized fraud, wherein there is a set of people who work, for example, like they have collected about 30, 40 people from the villages, and they have their ID cards and whatnot, and then they ask them to apply for a loan, and after that, forget about it. So this is something called as an organized or a group frauds. The third thing that happens is wherein you use a bot, or it is basically an intelligent fraud, where I use and I write a kind of a bot or a software which can mimic or mock a customer and start applying for the loan. The third one, the last one, what I call it is not exactly a fraud, but a lot of times the system, the entire tech systems or from the company side might have certain bugs or glitches. The moment the bugs or glitches are known to the customer, it goes like a viral, and everyone will start utilizing that vulnerability, and then probably kind of misusing the issue what is there within the system, and then trying to kind of borrow more or kind of repay it without paying money and whatnot, right? So those are the other things that happens here. So these frauds are not very unique only to a segment like India. These are the phenomenon what every other matured countries, every other matured tech-based fintech companies in different geographies have seen it. But only thing is the solutions are unique. There is no single solution that one can bring in to kind of protect themselves. In India, I think, so there are systems which are already digitized. For example, like in many of the countries, the ID check, like what we do here as an Aadhaar check, and then we could do the eKYCs, or we could digitally check the identity of a person. I think that is not even matured as much as what we are in India. But in certain other countries, I think with the fingerprint, you could basically get all the details, right? So it's a highly matured digitized or ID check companies as well exist here. Countries as well exist. We are somewhere in the middle. India is evolving in terms of how much digitization is happening. So we are in that particular journey. So the best way to attack is to always kind of foresee and then be ahead of what the customer should be thinking, and then develop solutions to protect your systems and ensure that the fraud onto your systems are minimal. All right. So this is one thing. Now let me talk about the other side. I mean, not just to keep blaming the customers here. There's so many apps in the Google Play. All right. So you just go to the finance section of finance category of Google Play, search for personal loan or lending. I don't know, you might end up getting like thousands of apps. Are these really the apps which are all backed by NBFCs? The answer is no. Are these apps are even running in India? Definitely not. There are so many apps which are run from outside the geography of India, luring the customer, saying that they would get a loan if they pay an X amount of processing fee, right? So, and then they collect the processing fee and say that you are rejected and the money is not returning back. All right. So it has become a simple scams or a Ponzi, or not a Ponzi, but a scams that are running across the internet, right? And many people are falling for it. So I think that's also is what happening in this digital world. So towards that angle, what I'm seeing is that there is a lot of regulations that are coming out from RBI. There is Google itself is trying to kind of put regulation in terms of what kind of apps can be kind of uploaded on the Google Play, right? So I think the regulation and probably a kind of an SRO structure coming in the digital lending space is going to further strengthen this. Probably the regulators are thinking in that direction. I also co-founded a specific not-for-profit organization called FACE, FinTech Association for Consumer Empowerment. Almost the top fintech lenders are party to that particular group, and then we are looking at forming that FACE as a SRO to control these kind of frauds which happens from the company or the app side itself, which lure the customers. So yeah, I think all in all, this is a phenomenon what we have to leave if you want to go digital. And the successful companies are the ones which will think ahead of all these frauds and then start building their the China wall on their systems and keep moving on. Yeah, that's my thoughts around this cybercrime and fraud. Yeah.
Great, Madhu. No, I think that was very, very necessary to a point of view for the audience, because I think people are falling on the either side. The lenders are falling on the side of basically frauds by the customer, and the customers are falling on the side of where the, such companies are there who are not validated, qualified, regulated, and they are just fleecing the customers, right? So it's a very interesting point, and good to have your thoughts on that. So coming to you, Anand, there is again, I just want to mention something which is prevalent for a long time, is that all of us know that, banks and NBFCs or the lenders typically want to lend to those people who already have the money, right? And if not the money, at least the credit worthiness, right? Which is what a sort of a virtual money, you can say a virtual trust, which is built, right? Now, Tata Motors is doing wonderful job, very sizable book. You are, as we had a brief chat before the panel, you did mention that, Tata Motors have been able to create a lot of entrepreneurs out of the normal people who would have generally been employed somewhere, right? And that's a big thing for the country, because I think all of us are looking for self-reliant India and a lot of entrepreneurship coming, which is, I think all of you are helping them, because at the end of the day, credit is going for the business or for some kind of a, helping them create their employment, etc. So Anand, just a quick snapshot about yourself, and then probably a thought about that, what kind of data points you are using, what kind of underwriting models, how you are basically able to assess that, a NTC customer or new to credit, which is what we call, is trustworthy for you to lend and for him to buy commercial vehicles, etc. And how do you judge that whether the person will be able to really run the business, right? If the business, so there is an intent to pay issue and there is also ability to pay issue comes up, right? So probably just a quick snapshot about yourself, and then maybe at this point wanted to get your thoughts.
Thank you, Sachin. And I am Anand Bang. I am Chief Operating Officer of Tata Motors Finance. Probably it's a very good question that I think we call it the points what you mentioned, that nation building through money lending. I think NBFCs contribute a significant play in the building our nation, and that's also to lending the money which are typically probably non-bankable customer, probably if I can use that word. In the commercial vehicle, now in commercial vehicle, the key is you are financing a earning or the asset which is going to earn for itself. Now, typically, with our experience, what we have seen that if you hand over a commercial vehicle or if a customer buys a commercial vehicle, whether it is new or used, and he run it properly, I think it's going to give him a good 20-30% margin, which he can take back at home. Now, the key happens that how do you assess the credit worthiness? And the question of always, I think what you rightly mentioned, the intent and the ability comes into the play. So at TMF, I think what we have done, that we have divided this problem into the two parts. One is that looking at our own data points, which is that we have been in this business for the last 60 years, and we in the last 15 years in the current form as a regulated subsidiary of Tata Motors, we have the 15 years data. So one is looking at our own data, and then strategy what we adopted is that I think we all collect a lot of data, but the data needs to be transformed into an information which can be used. And now that information needs to become a wisdom which can help you in taking the decision. So 5-6 years back, we said that, okay, now we have financed 2 million customers. What do we do of this particular data? So then we started cutting it and looking at that. What are the applications where the customer is using this particular asset? How is the locality of that particular asset and that particular application is performing? So the moment you start sizing your own data, I think you understand that you have the clear trends, which helps you in making better and better understanding. So that's the first portion, that using analytics on your own data and then coming with the conclusions or the risk models, which helps. So that's the first part of which probably explains you the viability if a customer approaches, let's say in a city of Latur, and he wants to buy a Ace vehicle. If you have the trends that he says that I'm going to apply this vehicle in vegetable business, then you know that how the viability is, what is the kind of the vehicles which have been running, which helps you in understanding the viability, and which then explains you that whether what is the kind of the risk score he is going to get. I think the second point that comes in, and which I mentioned, is that using technology, and specifically in the last 5-6 years, the kind of the fintech players which have come in. So today, the bank statement analysis, the credit checks to the various bureaus, the fraud checks to the platforms like Hunter. I think that is another way by which you ensure that what is coming in your system is the quality is good. I think when you mix and match these two items, I think that's the way how the underwriting works. And the third program tells you that you integrate everything and it should work seamlessly. And that's where the digital play into come in. We have designed a LOS system through a fintech company. It's called Turbo. Now, Turbo has an ability to approve a case within 3 minutes. And it goes and it talks to some close to 7 integrations, which are done with the various our own data and some fintech companies, which does the bank statement analysis, the credit checks, the risk containment, the RCU checks, and it comes back and it gives you whether the customer is eligible or he's not eligible. And that is this kind of the model which has served us well. It has helped us, I think, in getting these customers into the core business. And we are very happy that still, whether I think before pandemic, we used to create around close to 15,000 entrepreneurs per month. During the pandemic year also, I think we were doing around 10,000-11,000 odd on an average, I think, the FTU or the first time buyer loans. And I think now when we look into this particular financial year, when the markets have gradually started coming back, we all have had a good July month. And I'm expecting that the moment we enter into the festival season, I think the things should start come, and whatever we have learned during the pandemic year, that we have become more digital savvy. Customers, our own customers, which you always say that they are truck drivers, are typically not digital savvy, but to our surprise, when we saw in the pandemic and typically on the collection side, when we used to collect 25 to 30% of our collections through cash, which is now at least half of those customers move to the digital forms. So I think in the new age, in the new post-pandemic world, I am hopeful that I think this combination should serve us well. And I think to create more and more entrepreneurs to serve our customers much, much better.
Great, Anand. No, I think that's wonderful, kind of, inputs given by Anand. So we have just about 7-8 minutes, and I wanted to use it to the maximum impact. So my request would be that all 4 panelists, and I'll go in the same sequence, 2 minutes each, and a very straightforward, simple question that NBFCs, as my experience of working, and I work with consumer tech companies, NBFCs, as well as the banks, all 3 layers what we talk about, and there are many other layers peripheral, right? Now, traditionally, NBFCs were born, and that's where the strength comes, is that one is that their reach in the market, right? Agility and reach. Second is the risk-taking capability. Third is basically thematic, which we call in mutual fund and other industries, like, sector understanding. Like, like Tata Motors is focused on commercial vehicles, IndoStar focused on commercial vehicle and affordable housing or other areas. Let's say, Credit Be focused on consumer finance, personal loans, unsecured loans, and Kinara Capital focused on basically the SME loans, small ticket, right? So this thematic sort of deep dive. And the fourth was the collection capability, because, you needed a lot more touch with the customer to be able to collect, because there was a cash collection days, right? Now, if you see today era, because of whatever reasons, actually the table is being turned. And one side, we have consumer tech companies who have far more better connect with the consumers. Like I talked about buy now, pay later. So we talk about Swiggy, Zomato, Ola, Amazon, Flipkart. Each one of them are connecting with consumers for a lot many things in a day. And the financing is getting embedded there. On the other side, if you see collection capabilities, I mean, most of the time the standing instructions, NASH, etc., is now becoming automated. There is a UPI base of collect. There is a merchant base of collect, etc., etc. So my quick question is that, 1 minute on both sides, that what are these partnerships complementary or competitive? That is one. And second, what do you see the future of NBFC in this, when one side you are seeing consumer tech companies hitting hard, other side banks trying to go to the market, and sometimes consumer tech companies integrating with the bank. So where is the space for NBFC in between, right? I know it's a bit, I think I should have asked this question back, but the question seems to be having its own undertones. And probably Aishwarya, with you, a minute or two, and then we can go in the same circle with Jaya and Madhu and Anand.
So Sachin, yes, all these tech-enabled companies can definitely help banks. Historically, I think NBFCs have always been agile in terms of reaching the last mile customers and being able to adapt to the changing environment, right? If you look at Kinara, for example, we have always been reinventing in terms of how we do business. We are front-end enabled, meaning we have doorstep customers, doorstep services to the customer, plus a heavy tech integration at the back end to enable them. I think Jaya mentioned it, there needs to be a happy medium between physical touch point and a digital led enablement to reach the customers at any point in time. With that being said, all the tech enablement is important. Partnerships with these tech-enabled industries is important so that we can go to the next level and go to the next segment of customers to be able to underwrite them. Partnership with companies like probably Hunter or other kind of enablement which could collect data, which could underwrite data, needs to work in a happy medium between how we access these customers. And yes, banks can certainly use all of that, but is that a threat to NBFCs? I think the biggest plus point for all NBFCs is the ability to reach the last mile. We have the distribution network. We have the ability to reach the tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, maybe cities of India where banks traditionally lack accessibility. That coupled with the time taken for a bank to underwrite a loan, I think we still have a long way in terms of evolution for NBFCs to feel threatened because of the banks. And the market is so huge. I think there is enough for all of this ecosystem to survive together. Like at Kinara, we are able to underwrite loans within 24 hours and give a decision, right? So the market is evolving, and I think we are all that much better for this particular target segment to have all of us serving them.
Sure. Jaya, from you, quick points.
So Sachin, the way I look at it is gone are the days of seeing each other as competitors. What I've seen is that, and I've been in the banking space and I've been right now in this NBFC space, there is an ecosystem which has been created to go by the the saying, live and let live. So you have, the co-lending and the co-origination coming in with banks, where banks say that, okay, fine, you guys are there at that end. So let's co-originate or co-lending, do a co-lending loans. And then you have the fintech guys who says, we'll provide you the support. Okay, you take us as a front end, we will source it for you. You process it because you have the capability and you have the last mile reach. So there's an ecosystem which is now getting built in of live and let live. Okay, competition is there. It's not that competition is not there. Each of them are there for business. But the point that I'm trying to kind of table over here is While earlier it used to be a very clear wall of difference between all the various organizations. Today, everybody are trying to kind of step in, come forward and say, okay, fine, let me source it for you. You process it, you do the credit evaluation and book the loan, or I can, it's an off balance sheet item. I'll do a co-origination for you. You put it in your books, and we'll kind of share the profit. So the when you asked a question about how can NBFC thrive in the market, I think NBFCs are best working in this market because they are in the middle, supporting both the systems, the bank as well as the fintech guys. Because none of these guys have a full length process capability in whichever ways, but the NBFCs are able to balance it in between. Either give support to the fintech guys or give support to the banks. So I think today's scenario is coming up. I mean, has come up probably in the best way in balancing both the sides of the market. And I think as long as this continues, NBFCs, even if I don't think in the pandemic also anybody shut down. Everybody's opening up. Things are happening, and there are new ways of partnership that is evolving over and over with all the different people in the market. So I think and see, the benefit of an NBFC is also there's no rigidity of the RBI on them. So there's a little flexibility than a bank. So that is where they use the strength to step out in the market. So that's I see as the strength of NBFCs, and it will continue to be there, and hopefully it kind of does well for all the NBFCs in the system.
Great. Madhu, your thoughts on this?
Hey, I kind of second what Jaya was mentioning. So there's actually banks are lagging behind in this space. If you look at all the consumer tech and the fintech companies, the participation of banks is very limited, but all the NBFCs are there. So for example, in banks wise, I think there's only RBL, IDFC are the only two banks, and probably Federal Bank, right? So Federal, RBL and IDFC are the only three banks which are active, especially in the space of large ticket, consumer lending or credit card kind of space. In that also credit card, all these fintechs are using because there is a regulatory arbitrage, what I would put it. Without a bank, you cannot run such products, prepaid cards or credit cards models and whatnot. But otherwise, the entire fintech lending is basically being backed by NBFCs. Okay, so there's multiple more NBFCs than banks. So that is one side. The second side is on the consumer tech, right? So what you mentioned is about, at least twice we picked up the topic of BNPL, buy now, pay later, or you also mocked about buy now, pay never. If you really look at the business model, it doesn't matter even if the customer doesn't pay. Let me tell you this, right? So the idea is if you go and source a customer, for example, you want to digitally acquire a customer, currently the cost, depending on what kind of loan you are trying to kind of acquire the customer, it can range anywhere between 500 rupees to 4,000 rupees, depending on the bureau score, the salaried, self-employed, new to credit, and whatnot. Now, the CAC of acquiring such customer is ranging between 500 to, let's say, 4,000 rupees. Okay. So now on the BNPL, your Swiggy order is at roughly averaging at about like 200 to 300 rupees. If I pay that 200 to 300 rupees as a buy now, pay later product, and if I acquiring the customer, what is better here? Even though there is a default, anyways, I was about to spend double the money than that to acquire the customer to my own lending product. So BNPL, there are different models and strategies what are evolving. So not everything what looks like credit is traditionally built to kind of make it as a loan book. I don't think any of the players who are trying to do BNPL, especially in the microcredit, offering the food delivery, or somebody is financing the Ola drives, somebody is financing the bounce, the bike hailing or a bike sharing kind of a model, somebody is financing that. It can range anywhere from 50 rupees to 100 rupees to 300 rupees. Nobody is trying to build a book using all this BNPL kind of methodologies. What they're intelligently trying to use, and we also intelligently try to use, is to acquire the customers. Right. So, and these particular cost of acquiring the customer is way lower compared to what you do as a digital marketing, wherein the cost is way higher in acquiring that one. So here, and also you get the loyalty of the customer very best because you have very simply trusted him by giving the 200 rupees as a Swiggy coupon or offer. Its way becomes easier to kind of attract. So just as a closing note, I guess NBFCs are playing a major role interacting with the consumer tech or the fintech companies. The second thing is these models, whatever is coming, not all these revolutionary models are used to build a loan book. They are quite very much used even in terms of customer acquisitions as well. So there are many more what we could see, these models coming up and probably surprising all of us here. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Madhu. No, I think that's really good insights. So, Anand, quick points from you on this.
Sure. I think I will give one reference from your BCG point as a consultant, what you said. See, our credit to GDP ratio is still much, much lower as compared to any of the, I think, historical trends of the whether China, US, what we see. So if I just look at from a simple data perspective, I think NBFCs and the banking system penetration is going to go up in our country. And in that, whatever we have seen that NBFCs are the key specifically on the micro small segment to get into, to understand those customers, to underwrite those customers, and to, I think, to reach those customers, you will need vehicles like NBFCs to ensure that that happens. So from that way, at Tata Motor Finance, we have been in this business for last 62 years. So what I see is that probably working with, so for the last 6-7 years since Ola, Uber started coming to India, I think we have worked with all the, whether we caught up at the time when they were the startups 6-7 years back, the Ola, Uber, Zoom Cars, Repos. I think we have worked with all these startups and have seen them in many of the startups. I think at Tata Motor Finance, we were the first who were the vehicle financiers in those startups. So I think they have their strength. They were solving a particular customer problem. I personally believe till the time we are focused and we are enough flexible to understand the market, which way the market is going, what are the next gen products which are going to come, and we are ready to adopt that. I think the futures of NBFCs is much, much better. If we continue to remain rigid, I think it is more on a few of the banks, I think how they have a traditional model. Second side, the co-sourcing code generation has become very, very eminent. I know most of the NBFCs have now co-sourcing partnership with the large banks, which helps them in sourcing customers. And in our case, we have co-sourcing partner with 3-4 banks. And a third of our book is actually assigned or securitized to the bank, which is the typical model to release the capital. So you can continue to recycle your same capital at multiple times to improve your ROEs. So I think the model is simple. I think we need to run it simply without complicating it too much. Then I think NBFCs are here to play and they can run a good, profitable way. That's what my take will be.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I think my question was to provoke you to get the best out of you in terms of what all you are doing, and but really good insights. So thanks for time, and I'm sure our audience will get greatly benefited with this.
Thank you very much, Sachin. Thank you all, Madhusudan, Jaya, Anand, Aishwarya. You four have provided a horsepower for a car to have a really fantastic journey. And Sachin, you have navigated that car through such beautiful landscapes. I wish this journey wouldn't, and I really wanted to go on and on. But there'll be other opportunities for us to engage in similar discussions. All of you really did a fantastic job. Thank you all very much. I wish you all the best. I wish all your stakeholders all the best. I think there are exciting days ahead for us, even though we are living in a little bit of a tough times. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Sachin.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Babu. Thank you.